All right, so ready for a deep dive, but with a bit of a twist this time. We're not, dissecting the latest gadget or anything. Today we're going way back. Think like digital archaeologists, but instead of bones, we've got blog posts.
Ooh, I like that analogy. So what kind of digital fossils are we digging up today?
We're diving into the archives of Prt.Sc, a tech blog that's been around for, well, over a decade.
Prt.Sc, huh? That's a name that takes me back. Okay, so what's so special about this particular blog, besides the nostalgic name, of course?
Well, imagine it like this. A tech journalist, right in the thick of it all, decides to share their thoughts online. Early cloud predictions, AI anxieties before AI was even a thing, even some pretty funny takes on everyday tech. It's all there.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. It's like a time capsule of tech history. We get to see what people really thought was coming down the pipeline.
Exactly. And maybe have a little laugh at our past selves in the process. Like, remember when we all thought we'd be living in a voice-controlled world by now?
Oh, absolutely. Those early visions of just barking orders at our devices.
Yeah.
Talk about optimistic. Actually, this blog captures that whole shift perfectly. There's a post from 2017 where the author is totally geeking out about how Alexa changed their morning routine, seriously changed it.
So they were an early adopter. I bet they went all in on the voice tech predictions. Did they get any right?
Some, yeah. Surprisingly so, actually. Like the rise of voice search. There's even this bit where they're talking about needing to optimize for Alexa back in 2016. Remember when that sounded crazy?
It's wild how fast something goes from the future to just another Tuesday, right? Though, I gotta say, you won't catch me dictating my grocery list to a speaker anytime soon.
And that's the thing about tech, isn't it? It's not always about the capability. It's about whether people actually want to use it that way.
Makes you wonder what today's hot new thing will look like in 10 years and which ones will be, the next Betamax.
Which brings us to a recurring theme in these early posts, the hype cycle. You see it with cloud computing, voice assistants,
Yeah.
and especially AI.
Oh yeah, the AI stuff must be a gold mine. All those early anxieties and what ifs. Robots are going to take our jobs. What if it becomes self-aware? Good times.
And the thing is, some of those fears, well, they weren't entirely off base, especially as AI gets more, sophisticated. This blogger was wrestling with ethical questions way back when, years before most people even knew what AI really was.
Okay, so ahead of the curve on that one.
Right.
What else did they call correctly? Give us the good stuff.
All right. So there's this series of posts from 2016 called Read Before Monday. Basically, the author would round up interesting articles and quotes they'd come across, like an early newsletter almost.
And what were the hot topics back then? Anything sound familiar?
Let's see. Data privacy ethics, the challenges of managing remote teams, communicating clearly in a digital world, stuff like that. Big stuff then, still big stuff now.
So this wasn't just some casual tech enthusiast. They were really thinking about the implications, the bigger picture. Kind of makes you wish you had a Read Before Monday for the next 10 years, right?
Right. Though honestly, that's part of what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. We're not looking for a crystal ball. We're looking at how someone was thinking, the questions they were asking, even back then.
Speaking of questions, something that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
This blogger really struggled with work-life balance. Being a tech journalist, even back then, had to be 24/7, right?
Oh, for sure. There's this one post from 2018. You can practically hear the exhaustion in their voice. They're ranting about Friday afternoon deployments.
Oof, anyone who's worked in tech has been there. Trying to push code right before the weekend. Recipe for disaster.
And this blogger's not afraid to say it. It's a good reminder that even in the tech world, setting boundaries, prioritizing yourself, that's important.
So easy to get sucked into the always-on mentality, especially when you love what you do. But this blogger reminds us that it's okay to, unplug and recharge every once in a while.
Right. And, for someone so plugged into the digital world, this blogger was surprisingly aware of how important real-world experiences are too.
It's like they knew that at the end of the day, tech is supposed to, make our human experience better, not take over completely.
Totally. And hey, sometimes those experiences are, let's just say, memorable, even when they're a little stressful. Remember that story about the author getting their Flipper Zero, confiscated at airport security?
Oh, man, that's right. Talk about a cautionary tale. So you're telling me my cool new gadget could get me flagged at the airport. That's reassuring.
Well, it kind of shows how hard it is to keep up with all the new tech, right?
Right.
What might seem harmless or even helpful to one person could look like, I don't know, a threat to someone else. It's a gap we're always trying to close, especially as tech gets more powerful and harder to, categorize.
It's true, and I think that's part of what makes this blogger's perspective so interesting. They were thinking about these things way back when, like before most of us were even considering flipper zeros or whatever.
Absolutely. They even talk about the downsides of all this convenient technology. There's a post from like 2019 where they're joking about, get this, drones delivering pizza becoming so normal that we forget how to order from a real person.
Wait a minute, they were joking about that back then because that's basically my life now. I can't even remember the last time I actually talked to a human to order food. It's all apps and algorithms these days.
See, and that's the funny thing about revisiting these old predictions, right? Sometimes reality ends up being even weirder than the joke. Makes you wonder what we're brushing off as the future. Now that'll be totally normal in a few years.
Oh, for sure. It's like we're stuck in this loop of thinking tech will change everything overnight and then being surprised when it actually does, but
Yeah.
like gradually. Remember when VR was going to revolutionize, well, everything?
Yes. The classic VR hype cycle. This blogger was actually pretty skeptical of VR early on, especially all the talk about it replacing real life interactions.
Really? What was their take on that?
Well, there's this one line from a post in 2020 that sums it up perfectly. They said, and I'm paraphrasing here, VR can take us to these incredible worlds, sure, but it can't replace actually sharing a meal with friends or the chaos of a family get together. And honestly, they were spot on.
It's like that saying, technology can connect us across the world, but it can also make us feel more alone if we let it.
Exactly. And this blogger, they seem to get that. They saw the good and the bad, the potential and the pitfalls. They weren't afraid to have some fun with it all, but also weren't afraid to ask the tough questions.
It's refreshing, honestly,
Yeah.
especially these days when it feels like tech news is either all sunshine and rainbows or doom and gloom. This blog feels, I don't know, more grounded.
Totally agree. There's a realness to their writing, an acknowledgement that they don't have all the answers, which is probably why their insights still feel relevant today. They weren't trying to be a prophet, just trying to make sense of it all.
And hey, sometimes the best way to understand where we're going is to look at where we've been, right?
Mm.
So we've talked AI, VR, voice assistants. What other tech gems are hidden in these archives?
Well, there's a whole series of posts from like 2021 where the author goes on this quest for the best word processor of all time. They even list famous authors who still swear by their ancient software. Can you believe it?
Hold on, are we talking like word perfect ancient, or even, dare I say it, word star?
WordStar it is, a true vintage find. And while it might seem like a dinosaur now, this blogger makes a pretty good case for the power of simple, focused tools, especially for writing.
It really makes you think, huh? Like, what's the next word star? What are we using now that'll be collecting digital dust in a decade?
Right. Though, like this blogger said, good writing is good writing, no matter the tools. Clarity, storytelling, connecting with your audience, that stuff never gets old.
So true. It's a good reminder for all of us in tech, I think. We can get caught up in the next big thing, but sometimes the most important stuff is the stuff that's always been there.
Couldn't agree more. And looking back at all these posts, it really hits home. It's not just about the tech itself, it's the human side of it all. The hopes, the worries, the funny moments, even the rants.
It's like we got a glimpse into how tech has really changed us, not just in terms of gadgets and gizmos, but on a personal level, how we work, how we connect, how we see the world.
And I think by sharing their journey, this blogger gave us a way to think about the future of tech, too. Not by making predictions, but by understanding the patterns, the questions, the things that make us human.
This has been pretty amazing, honestly. I came in expecting a fun little nostalgia trip, and it turned into something, well, much deeper.
That's the beauty of looking back, I guess. You start to see the bigger picture, connect the dots in a way you couldn't before.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the Prt.Sc archives, what's the one thing you hope sticks with our listeners?
That's a good question. I think it's this. Approach tech with curiosity, but also a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, to laugh at the absurdity of it all, and to remember that at the heart of it all, it's really about us.
Beautifully said. And on that note, dear listener, we'll leave you with this thought. Next time you're amazed by the latest tech marvel, take a second to think about how far we've come. And maybe, just maybe, how some things never really change. Until next time.